Thanks for coming back to continue with this discussion of the book Called to Community, The Life Jesus Wants for His People. And we are already at chapter 34, talking about the wonderful subject of submission, submitting oneself to another person, or that we submit ourselves to each other, which is really an important virtue in community. And the two authors who have pieces in here, I think, have some really good thoughts on this topic. The first piece by Richard J. Foster opens with the line, "Every discipline has its corresponding freedom." And submission is a discipline. It's not something that comes naturally to us, right?
No, and it's a very touchy subject.
Right, and I think we can look around at the world around us, and basically ever since, the 1960s, where so many of the mores and norms of the past were thrown out, and there was a real strong sort of anti-authoritarian impulse, particularly among young people. Starting then, that's really now become sort of the default, and wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so, and along with that, with rejection of authority and the constant need to debunk everything, I think what I've seen, or what history has actually shown, is that also comes along with like a loosening of self-discipline, which in turn just leads to abject failure and just not really good fruits.
Failure and really unhappy lives,
Yes.
Right? I think we have some of the highest rates of, depression in this country and in Western civilization in general. And so you have to, at a certain point, ask, has this anti-authoritarian sort of rebel, let's not go along, let's not be blind followers, has that resulted in a greater and increased quality of life? And I think we can say it hasn't.
Yeah, I would say it's just, and that's the other thing that the authors talk about in here, also from a biblical touchstone or perspective, is that it's not so much about the words or the connotations necessarily, it's about an attitude and a spirit.
The spirit, yeah.
And that's what we've seen, is how, losing that spirit of putting others first and self last can lead to just mental health crisis and the decline and demise of society.
The second entry by John F. Alexander references, I believe it's the second one, it's the first one. Richard J. Foster's in second section, or third section. He references what, for me, when I joined the Bruderhof, was just a really important saying or teaching of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verse 34. "If any person would come after me, let him deny himself and take up the cross and follow me." And Foster writes, "Almost instinctively we draw back from these words. We are much more comfortable with words like self-fulfillment and self-actualization than we are with the thought of self-denial." But then the freedom he talks of really is the freedom of realizing that there's not that much in this world that's that important. The things that we think are really important, life or death, did I get the job I want? Is my life, is this or that thing in my life working out? These things ultimately, if we can hold them loosely, there is a freedom in realizing that these things are not important.
Mm-hmm. And I would take it even a step further and hazard a guess that most people have had experience in their lives that countered what they had actually originally wanted, and to see the blessing and beauty in what unfolded because you yourself didn't make a choice or a decision, or that can be a really beautiful thing. That has been for me, for sure.
But Doreen, are we talking here about passivity and blindly following the lead of someone else or a group of other people? Is that what submission is?
No, I would disagree with that strongly. That attitude is also evil, I would say. Because then you're not assuming any responsibility for yourself. And I think that can also lead to a lot of self-pity and a lot of negativity, because it's always everyone else's fault if something doesn't work out, not your own. So it's not passive. How do you say
Passivity.
Passivity, or blind following. It's not even like a spectrum between that and rebuttal or argument. And John F. Alexander also talks about it. He says passive acceptance of the way things are destroys, and so does aggressive destruction of everything established. It's a question of spirit, and that's really what it is.
It's a really on a whole different level. It's a spirit of cooperation. Mm-hmm. So a submissive person can and should ask questions. Can and should, think for themselves, but then also be willing to give way to someone else. Let the fruits show for themselves. If something that you don't necessarily agree with or understand with turns out well, rejoice that someone had a better idea than you. Mm-hmm. Or if it fails, don't gloat, but in a spirit of cooperation, try something else.
Yeah, and the Bible chapter that came to my mind right away was Romans 12, where it talks about self-sacrifice and sacrificing yourself for others, but also love and what that actually means, and how you should hate what is evil and cling to what is good and serve each other and show hospitality. And it's just very hopeful and uplifting, and I think it aligns very well with this conversation.
So submission, paradoxically, is the greatest freedom. It's a fact. So great chapter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.